All right, there we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Colored by Felix podcast. And I am really excited because we have an amazing artist with us today. His name is Layne Johnson. Layne, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to talk to you today.
Awesome. Welcome. I'm glad to be here and welcome to my studio. So if nobody's seeing this in the background, are they? It's just audio, really?
There will be video, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
It's
your
fairly
studio is
clean.
really pretty, so.
Where is yours? Is it in the house, in the garage, or is it a separate
No, I have a
room?
separate studio from our house. We built this about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's a big 24 by 24 open room that I can switch it around as I need it, move easels around. Everything's on casters. And just recently we got Starlink. So our Zoom calls are way better now. And Starlink, I was able to we're putting Ethernet in. So I recently, last few days, flopped everything in the studio. So the table I'm in front of, I had to move all that, all the heavy equipment, we had to move it. So, but this is the way it'll be from now on. And it's a big, I've got a very large window to paint under. So
Awesome.
Yeah, the lighting is very important, and I see you have really good lighting there. Yes, so Layne, I found your work through, that's how I found most of the artists are on Instagram, and Art Featuring page shared your work, and I was like blown away by the details and the big paintings that you do with the one. There's many that caught my eye, but I remember there was a beautiful so colorful, but it wasn't too much color, but it was like just a nice tint of like this huge cloud coming in with a little bit of color coming in onto the ground, and the way you created that landscape, just the composition was just beautiful. And I started following you and looking at your work, and you have a really good eye to, like, it's not just the landscape, it's just the composition and the layout of where you put your trees, your clouds, everything seems like such a good capture, and it's beautiful. And I just love every work, every piece that you do. And that's how I found you. And I'm very interested in, hearing more about how you started. And you do, and that's oil painting, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've painted in pretty much everything over the years. People know I painted for children's books for like 15 years. And I started with watercolor in that. And then I was painting with acrylic. That was more for covers, but finally I transitioned over to oils for all my picture books. And so I basically, my history is I started in oils when I was like a young teenager. And then I went to acrylics. And then through high school and college, acrylics, gouache, water, everything, ink, everything. And then when I got to children's books, and I finally came back to oils, and oils is my first love, really. I can just do so much more with it. I was painting acrylic paintings, and people were attributing them as being oils, and because that's the way I see and the way I want to make it look. And I finally just realized is, why am I trying to mimic oils when I can just paint in oils? So that's where I went with that. So
that's really cool, because we've interviewed, it seems like, it's like you almost, your instincts know what you want to do, because we've interviewed people who use acrylics and are able to achieve kind of a watercolor effect as well. Yep. So it's kind of interesting how people kind of, their eye is drawn to a certain thing. I don't know.
So how, I had a question about, like, whenever you're doing a piece, how long does it usually take you? I know oil's dry, but when you dry longer, and so when you work on adding like the next section, the next as you get closer layer, don't you have to wait until it like dries, or do you how long does it take you to finish a painting, and how do you work?
Well, I'll give you a couple of different answers. First of all, I paint in layers, and I typically will paint in the afternoon. And I use a drying medium. Liquin is one of the ones I use. There are several good ones out there. Liquin works fine. And so I'll paint all afternoon, and then the next day I'll come back and it'll be all dry. So I'll work, or I can work in a different area if something isn't dry, but it's dry. So again, that's what changed the equation when I was in children's books, because you were on a deadline and you had to get your work dry. So once I learned about that, it, I never went back, from that.
Does that affect the way that oils in the end look, or is it just
No,
it's like
no.
texture?
The way I learned, and I learned basically in the beginning, you just use whatever. In college, we were using turpentine, and so you would thin your paint in the beginning, and you'd paint and then finish it. We weren't using mediums at all. And nowadays, we know that it's better. You can start like that, but if you're painting too thinly throughout the painting, you're creating weak layers that can not support a good painting. So you do need to follow a fat over lean rule. So as you get further into painting, you're adding more of your medium, and whatever medium that is, it can be linseed oil. Linseed oil is, of course, very fat. Liquid is considered a fat still. So you just have to keep it moving in the right direction so that at the end of the painting, regardless of what it looks like, it's a solid painting that'll last for a long time. So you have to construct a good painting.
I'm curious to know also like where you learned all of this. Like you went to art school?
I went to art school, but I took painting 101, and this is back in 1978. And back then, art was very different than it is now. There was not a whole lot of representational painting in vogue at the time. And so when I saw what everybody else was producing, I was like, I don't want to do that. And I kind of went a different route. I became a graphic designer and then later an illustrator. So I had built a career on all of those things, but in the same time, I would paint on the side just for myself. So over all the years, when I did children's books, I learned a lot of things and techniques just because more and more things were available to learn from. When the internet came into being, by then I'd already was pretty much where I am now. When I began, there just wasn't not a lot of people teaching basic oil painting. It wasn't around. I learned from the little bit I learned was from a lady that was in our neighborhood who painted in oils and was very, I don't want to say amateurish, but she knew to paint in oils and produce little paintings that were, nice, and everybody would meet at the church and go paint together. So I learned the basics from basically like that. But, there were certain books, Walter Foster books that were around, and they only show little segments of a painting progress, but that's all I had access to. But I think by the time I graduated college, that was in '82, Bob Ross was coming out. I never knew Bob Ross until later. I never watched him. Of course, I enjoyed watching him later, but the one I remember seeing that I never followed because that's not the way I painted was Willie Alexander, who taught Bob Ross. And a lot of people tried to learn painting from Bob Ross, and it's wet on wet, and they struggle with it because it's not as easy as he does the painting in 30 minutes, and he practices like 2 or 3 paintings. And I would never say his paintings are masterpieces. So they're entertaining paintings and people enjoy watching him, as do I. But it's not the way I paint at all. Painting in layers is not that technique at all. So it never would have helped me. And I think sometimes it gets people in trouble. They're trying to learn the basics, and they're complaining about all their colors are going to mud and their blending things are getting muddy. It's like, yep, you're painting, and as a beginner, you're trying to do this, and it's hard. So when I teach painting, I teach in a way that's easier to understand. It's step by step. You're not racing to get a lot of paint down fast. It's relaxing. You can take your time. And more importantly, it's repeatable. You can learn how to paint this way, and you can go to your next painting and bring whatever you learned from the previous painting and continue repeating successes or failures. The thing is, you learn from making mistakes, and at least I hope we do. I know I have. So it's important to just keep going forward. You asked me earlier about the how long does it take to do a painting, and I had an answer that I gave because I got this question. I visited lots of schools and saw lots of children over the years doing children's books. And I would get that question, how long does it take to do a painting? And I said, well, it depends. If you're painting an egg, or if you're painting a skyscraper with all those windows, one takes longer than the other. So it depends on the detail of something, if what's involved. And then of course the size, I painted a 30 and 30 challenge a couple of years ago. And you're painting basically one painting a day. And the way I did it, I would do like an underpainting or whatever, the beginning part, imprimatura, one morning, and then in the afternoon, I would complete the previous day's painting. So basically it's still one painting a day, but you're ending up with 30 paintings within a month. And so, but they were only 6 by 6 inches. So that's how you can do that quickly, but you start working really large and it's just a different animal. You have to be patient. And like I told kids in school visits, it's like, there are certain parts of it, I showed them, this is the way a painting started for children's books. I showed them the pencil, and I'm going to show them a mock-up of it. And then I would show them the finished piece of art, and they would see the process. So it's just different when you're working larger. There are certain areas of the painting that I call them the ugly phase, because it's not ugly. It's just, that's part of blocking in something. And people get frustrated because they're trying to achieve something so quickly, and realizing this, like, it takes time to create something. If you're cooking food, you can't just go, voila, look, there's a meal. Or it takes time, especially baking or anything like that. You have all these steps that you have to do. And at the end, it's like, wow, that was awesome. So at the end of the day, when I finish the painting, whether it's 6 inches or it's, 6 feet, I want the viewer to I want them to feel as though they can step into the painting, that it's a real place, so that's what's important for me, at least. So anyway, size, it takes longer. So like this painting way back here is a 30 by 40 that is just completed. And that size takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what's involved in the painting. So.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. No problem.
Also, it's interesting you brought up this topic about the sizes, because I noticed, have you ever had that where you painted a small painting and you're like, oh, this is beautiful, it looks really good. But then I remember what happened to me probably a few times when I tried to paint the same image in a big painting. It does not look the same. Even with the details, you add more details, just the picture itself does not look the same. So like deciding the size is also important, of the piece.
I was talking about this to my students yesterday, that if you look at something on Instagram or you're looking at something on your phone, and if it's not a very good painting, but it's small, it looks better. But if it's a large painting and you're looking at it on your phone, it tends to look worse for some reason. Seeing a large painting that's done well in person, it makes all the difference. It's just the nature of it. But it's some things don't translate, and you do just have to, along your journey, get the experience of what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes what you do need is just simply more reference or something like that. Because one of the things I remember, I had my hand spanked with or on in painting 101 by the teacher, because I was Mr. Magic Hands. He called me Magic Hands. And I would paint a landscape, and he said, you're not painting what you're looking at. And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm painting a tree. And he said, yeah, you're painting a tree. You're not painting that tree. So observation of real things is the thing that does get a more authentic painting for a landscape, at least. Like I say, you can extrapolate, but you need the experience of that will help you create that kind of nice tree or nice scene or whatever. You can edit things, you can move things and such. But like if you want to paint a authentic looking, let's say a post oak, then you need to kind of look at them and see what their nature is. And from that, you can extrapolate, the limbs of a post oak are different than a limb of, let's say, a red oak or something like that. So the more experience, and that really means getting out with your eyes and getting out into the world. And I'm talking about landscapes and seeing. And of course, if you're doing figurative, that means you're looking at figures and studying under that method. So it's always I'll never pretend I'll go, oh, I don't ever have any problems. I have problems all the time. So, but I've got Sandra, she'll fix it all. So, and she's always right. She'll say, you need to do something here. And I go, yeah, okay. I'll say, no,
Yeah,
I do that too.
That's
it looks great. And then I come back and go, she's right.
Yeah. First you're like, no, it's good. It's good.
It's
And
good.
you
I
kind
know
of
what to
have
do.
this
Yeah.
little bit, but then you come back and sit for a minute and you're like, yeah, she's right. I gotta do this, which is a good challenge for us. We need that,
is. I mean, one of the things nowadays, because we have all this cool technology, I mean, you can have your cell phone and you look at something and you want to change it, but it's like, well, hang on, we take a picture of it and I bring it onto the computer and move some things around or do whatever I want to do to it and go, oh, that won't work, or, oh, that works good. And then I'll project that little image and then make the change. That way you're not just committing to something and then go, oh, I didn't like the way it worked out. So a little workaround.
Nice. Now I have a couple quick questions before we move on. Is when you talk about, referencing real life, do you think there comes a point like, do you still go out and reference from real life, or do you think that it's like you've now acquired that foundation and now it actually is more helpful to just go from your experience and imagination?
It's honestly, I'll always go to real reference, and I will use my imagination, or I'll find myself painting in clouds and not looking at anything because I've done this a lot more and I understand the structure of certain kind of clouds and lighting. Lighting is everything. But what I was getting back to with my magic cans, the teacher telling me that, he said, you're painting manneristically. And said, if you want to paint real things, you have to go see real things. You have to paint what you see. So in the end, you can just paint from your imagination. I'll never say there's anything wrong with that. But with me, at least, I can only go from that so far. And so if I'm looking, I will always go out exploring and find this things that I like to paint and see in landscapes that I like to see. And then, of course, if I say, well, I think I need a tree here, and then I can add that. It needs something for a composition or something like that. That's very different. But I run into people saying, I'm not inspired. I've lost my inspiration. And I ask, so what's the problem? And he goes, I just can't think of anything to paint. It's like, go paint what's in front of you. Go outside, look around, paint in plein air, paint a still life in front of you, make it that, because they're so stuck in thinking that I'm not creative unless I'm making it up out of my head. And that's just not the case. The part of being a representational painter is you're not just learning hand skills or eye hand skills, you're learning visual skills of seeing the way to see. And so when I go out and I'm looking in the Texas Hill Country, let's say, I'm looking for structure. What's interesting to me that will create, I see the possibilities for the painting. So you really do have to just explore. I think it'll open up new worlds for you. And sometimes you'll be working in a painting and you'll just, here's Bob Ross thing, a happy accident. You'll do something and it's like, hey, and something will just go, oh, that could be this now. This could be an outcropping of rock. And you could, you can call it inspiration or whatever. It's just being able to see, to be able to, look at things a little differently to perhaps bring out something new. So that's what I do.
That's really cool. And then last question on that topic, I was just wondering, because we've talked about on the podcast before, that people who are trying to just be 100% photorealistic, unless that is really your goal, I think, for a lot of artists, that might be kind of missing the point, right? Because you want to add a little bit of your own touch to it. And so with you advocating that approach where you immerse yourself in real nature and you study it, where does the addition come from? Because is it all about the light? Because that's what I noticed looking at your work, is there is some very interesting stuff that you do with light. Is that where yours comes in?
I love the way light plays on things, and that's where you create drama. I mean, this is coming from my background in children's books. Is I always think like perhaps a cinematographer thinks. I will light something that's in a way that's not just boring, and it's just I see people doing paintings. It's like, well, that's a well-executed painting. It doesn't move me to, it looks like nice painting, does it make me want to go, wow, I want to have that painting, or, oh, this reminds me of this place, or, it's not an experience for me, and I want an experience. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What was the first part of your question? I'm sure.
No, that was really it. It's like for the people out there who are maybe they find themselves just stuck in this box of painting exactly what they see. It's
Right.
like, where do
Well,
they
I'm a
add
big
something else or
proponent.
their own touch?
I'm a big proponent of painting an impression of detail. People go, you have so much detail in your paintings. Well, if you see the painting in person, you're going to go, oh, there is detail there, but there's a lot of it is the impression of detail. And so I can never understand anybody that, and there are people out there that paint super photorealistically, and there's some of them that start up in the upper corner of a painting and it's all penciled out, and they just fill it all in. And the end result is a very realistic painting, but I just can't imagine that being a fun experience to paint. For me, it would not be, because I want to, like I said, have these moments where I can go, oh, I want to change that. Or like I teach in my courses, don't worry, you go through the stages, but with no worry. You get towards the end, still no worries, because at the end are your final details and adjustments. That's when you can adjust things. You still have to have a solid composition from the beginning. So it's important to pay attention to that. But at the end, there's just not the immediacy to, I've got to nail this down, the first try, because that's what makes a lot of people be so frustrated with painting. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember Felix always said that like that would frustrate him, like when he first started learning, and finally he was like, I'm just gonna like go with the flow and see how it goes, because it wasn't enjoyable, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to, because when you think about the whole image, like I have to create, it's like overwhelming and can be stressful. But if you just take out certain sections and focus on like just that part, and like what you were saying, just mix enough just for that, because sometimes I remember I thought like I have to mix all the shades in the painting, when I first started, and it was just overwhelming, and the paint would dry because I'd work with acrylic,
Yeah,
but like then I
I'm
was like,
I'm
no.
frugal, I'm not going to mix all this paint and then it's like, well, I didn't use but this part. I work on the part I'm going to work on, and the next morning I come back and I scrape the palette and put out whatever new paint I need, or the previous paint that's still there and doing well. And I saw somebody the other day, they said they mix out all the paint, and I'm going, why? You're not using all the paint. So,
yeah, exactly. And when I learned that, I experimented, I was like, wow, this is actually a lot more peaceful and enjoyable, taking it in sections and just working on little parts. Like today, I'm just going to work on getting the sky, just the background sky.
Yeah.
And then the next day, the clouds and the details, and just work.
You said the right thing. It's like you felt better doing it that way.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand. A lot of people, they're so frustrated with things, and to choose a way that has to be so exacting, it's not fun. I mean, now getting to the skill level where you make every stroke count, and you are, say, like a John Singer Sargent, where you're making every stroke count, that's a skill set to aspire to. That's fantastic. And some people get there, but there aren't that many John Singer Sargents anymore. And there were many paintings that he, at the end of his sessions of the day, he just scraped it all off. He didn't like it. So I think he had a saying this, all of his portraits were people, something like he lost friends when he did the portraits. So I don't know. I mean,
actually, I've heard that with a couple artists. I think also like that happened because like I remember like at least from the like documentary we watched on like Picasso or something, like in the beginning he used to do all these very realistic like portraits, and then as time went on he got like sick of it, and so he started making them like more abstract, and like he wouldn't show people till like the very end, and once he showed it to them it looked super ugly and they're like mad.
Picasso is a good example, because I always recommend to anybody, and this was what I ran into when I was in college, that all the people that started with me in painting, I saw their paintings and I didn't really, there's all found objects and things like that, which is nothing wrong with that. But these are the same people that were taking drawing classes with me, and they just could not draw very well at all. And so at the end of the day, it didn't matter for what they were doing. It was all these other things. But if you're a representational artist, then you needed to learn how to draw. And I think it's important for anyone, no matter what kind of technique you were using. And Picasso is a good example. He knew how to draw. I think his father was an art teacher, but he knew how to draw, and then he moved beyond it. So a lot of people, they want to start out there, and it's like, well, you can.
Yeah, actually, someone commented the other day that we saw, and they're like, you have to know the rules in order to break it. And that's what like artists do, or something like that.
It's good. Yeah. I think especially mechanically, I'm not big on rules. I will tell people in my courses that this is not a compendium on everything in this thing. You're trying to teach perspective. That's a deep dive on anything. You're trying to, a course I'm probably going to do in the future will be reflections. Reflections can get really complicated, but it's more, or even color mixing. And so I think my son, who went to SCAD, he knows more technically about color mixing than I do, but I know more about practical color mixing for painting. So that may be a course that is combining both of our knowledge, because I think a lot of people will get befuddled with a lot of technical things in color. They're just trying to learn how to paint, and you have to start at a certain point. And you may understand all this, but you still have to be able to mix, color on the palette. And just like last night's post on Instagram, I showed something about simultaneous contrast, and people were going, sorcery, it's magic. It's like, no, it's just a real thing. Google it. And it's one of those weird things about painting. Basically, if you've ever been mixing something on your palette and you're trying to get the right color of blue, let's say on a sky, and you get over there, it's like, nope, that ain't it. Because it's all comes down to the light. It's everything. Color is contextual. It's context. So you put that blue on top of an prematura orange reddish, and it's going to look different than it did on the palette. So you just have to get the experience down and get the one you want. And then later, again, you can adjust it if you need to. So.
Yeah, that's good. And
sorry.
Just one more thing. I just talking about, like you were you have courses and you're teaching, right? And I can kind of relate in a way where sometimes in the beginning, like to help an artist, I would tell them, because I'm showing them in the video, and it's still in the video when they're looking at the screen, they're not going to see exact color. Even if they pause the video, it's not going to be mixed exactly like it. So I'm like, don't stress over trying to copy exactly what I have on the palette. If it's a little shaded dark or lighter, just get something close to it and just move on. Like from there, you'll learn and yeah, because it's always going to be different, even if I try to mix it again,
You mentioned something that I hear a lot, and I don't understand it. And maybe because I'm just older, I don't know, but I hear a lot of people on Instagram making comments on my post saying it relieves their stress. And I'm going, what's all the stress coming? Where's all the stress in the world coming from right now? And of course, I know where a lot of it is right now. We're all nuclear war or whatever. There's lots of stuff going on. But for the average just beginning painter and looking at somebody painting it relieves their stress, I'm glad I can do that. I just wish it wasn't. I wish people weren't so stressed out. That they will contact me about their painting and say things like, "I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it," and I'm going, "Ruin it? Go ahead. It's a piece of canvas. It's nothing. It's not. This is not brain surgery." And the thing is, you will learn more by making mistakes than you will by making a perfect painting every time. And one of the things beginning painters need to understand and embrace is, and this is a word, criticism. An art critic. It's not a bad thing, and I would encourage anybody to find their person, their go-to person that they can ask and get an honest review from or honest answer. And for me, it's Sandra. She's really good. But the thing is, all the people telling you that looks beautiful, this looks great, that will never move the needle on your painting skills. It'll make your your ego feel good, but you're not going to learn anything that way. So it is good for you to have some, now there are some people that will look at something and say, give you feedback, but they'll give you feedback to make your painting more like their painting. And so you have to kind of guard against that. But if just several people that aren't even experts say, look at this area, another person said, yeah, this area right here, I don't know what it is. You start hearing a few of those, you need to pay attention to that because there's something going on there. But again, if you have a mentor you can trust, or you're a good friend. I had a good friend that he was a printmaker. He didn't paint at all, but he had a really good eye. And so you could ask him about something and he would say, yeah, right here, or, something like that. But yeah, like I said, criticism is not bad. It's not an ugly word. So the more you can, the more mistakes you make, the more you're going to learn, basically. So don't think the mistakes are bad. They're the ways to move forward. So
100%.
So with social media and being on social media, I also have some more questions about that topic, but since we're talking about criticism, how has that been like for you on social media as you've been on there? Like, do you get a lot of people that are like critics, or do you feel like people are mostly there just to support? And how do you take that? Like, have you ever actually like changed anything about your art based off of those critics?
I'm very blessed to have very nice comments, 99.9% of the time. I think a couple of people have made a snarky comment about something, and there were always guys for some reason. I don't know. One lady,
I thought the exact same thing.
Yeah, one lady made a comment, is not this last April Fool's, but the previous April Fool's, where I dressed up as Bob Ross. So you can't see me I'm from behind. And I was talking like I talk, and I kind of sound like Bob Ross, I've been told. And so then I turn around and say, but I'm not Bob Ross. And I'm wearing this big Bob Ross afro. And this lady said, I'm appropriating, certain culture, blah, blah, blah. Oh man, somebody needs a cookie.
Oh boy.
Someone needs to just take a walk.
Oh,
they say on the internet, when people are getting too intense in the comment sections, the saying that has emerged is "go touch grass." Back in nature. Remember, it's just the internet. Touch
It's
grass.
just the internet. Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
So
Not been lucky.
I'm curious how you got on social media. Like, was it your wife, Sandra, or your son? Who was the brilliant mastermind behind you getting on social media?
It was Sandra. I mean, we got into Instagram, I think it's pretty early. 06. When? 16. Yeah, she said 06. I don't think it's been around. So
Nice. That was prime time for Instagram.
Yeah, I remember the first 1,000 were the hardest. It was rough, and it was all learning it all. I had been on Facebook for years, and I got off of Facebook because I was just wasting so much time on it. And she said, let's use this. And what was the first thing we posted? Do you remember? It wasn't 30. Anyway, it was a long, hard slog through the first 1,000. And then depending on what the algorithm is doing, like you'll be humming along, blah, 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 and all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, what now?
Yeah.
And
I
then
know,
they pick
it's
up
like,
again.
come on, Instagram.
So Sandra was key to doing that and figuring it all out. And basically, I try to post something every day. And it's not that hard to do. And she's really good. All of her postings is with a cell phone. And so she's got a good steady hand. And I remember some of the early posts, because she would get creative and she would do this. And somebody said, well, I'm getting seasick or something. It's like, stop doing that. No, she's really, really good. I mean, I tried to do things and I'm just terrible.
Yeah.
I don't have any hand skills.
So a pro tip for artists: get a wife that can help you.
Yeah. No, it is helpful. I mean, if you're doing Instagram, to have somebody there to help you do it, because I mean, if you've got somebody filming you doing something, if that's what you want to do, it's really hard to film yourself doing something, because I've done it, and putting something on a tripod means it's just rigid, it's static. And, you know, and I like music. So when I post things, I will add music to it, and I'll be playing to music. I mean, painting to the music. So there are times music hits me hard, and sometimes I will be painting something and the right thing comes along and I'll just start crying. So I've always loved music. And
what are some of your favorite artists or genres
in music?
Yeah.
My background is I was played in orchestra and band, so mine is more classical backgrounds, but motion picture soundtracks are my go-tos. Although when I'm painting, a lot of times I'm painting to audiobooks or podcast and music. So, but if something comes on from Meet Joe Black, it's like, oh boy, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
That's so funny. So, it's funny because Felix gets goosebumps on like some songs too, and I always make fun of him because
like I try to hide them, like every time I hear a nice song and I start get the goosebumps all over,
and I start laughing,
and I'm like, I'm like, you don't have goosebumps? This is like the chord progression was so good here.
Andrew is cold-blooded.
I've always been jealous of painters and people who do visual art because of the fact that you guys get to listen while you work. I think that's so brilliant. Yeah.
I remember when I was writing, I'd be writing something. I could listen to music and write, but there's no way to listen to an audiobook or, the audiobook is something you could do while you're painting. And where'd that go? And you can get into a painting. And sometimes you can get in the painting. I'm going, well, this brush is not working the way it's supposed to. And it's just not cooperating. You're just not in the groove. But if you just either switch brushes, sometimes this brush, like a foliage brush I'm using, will not be working the way I want. I feel like I'm clumping along. Either switch the brush or just keep going, and then realizing it's all correctable later. You can all adjust it. And then you just find yourself getting into the groove again. So sometimes, some days it's really easy. Other days it's harder. So I think that's life,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's go back a little bit. Like, how did you know you wanted to be an artist? And like, was it immediately like when you were in high school or whatever, or like, how did you become, and when did you become a full-time artist? And how was that experience for you?
Like I said, I think I started, how old was I? 12 or 13 years old. And I always loved coloring, and so my mom had a paint by number, a couple of them. I still have one of her Last Supper paint by number set that's on my wall. Oh. And but I was just fascinated how colors side by side, when you step back, they blend together. And so I think I even did a few paint by numbers way back then. And then basically said, well, I don't need to do this. I can just go this book and follow the directions. I was never afraid of trying it for some reason. Mm-hmm. And so then I got some help with the lady in the neighborhood. And in high school, I was a painting fool. It kept me out of trouble probably, but I was painting. I met Sandra the last semester of high school in art class.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
We lived less than a mile apart all of our life, and we never knew each other until the last semester. And then we dated for 5 years, and we just celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary. So,
congratulations!
So,
that's inspiring.
Yeah, but so through high school, and then got into college. I was a graphic designer out of college, and then an illustrator, freelance illustrator, and I've always that's been my main career. So I've illustrated for a long time and got into children's books, and those were more complete paintings, and a lot more of what I would want to paint, as opposed to, we want you to paint this, or worse, back in the early days, we want you to paint this in this person's style. And it's like, guess what? You did it because you had bills to pay.
Yeah.
And back then, honestly, I hadn't found my own style. And that's another question I get a lot is, well, how do you find your style? And it's like, well, you've got to get through some painting miles to do that, because you need to learn some things, and it's good to learn from various people, various things. Take what you like from somebody or not. And you'll find what works for you, and when you paint, it brings out it makes your art sing, so to speak. It'll make you feel like this is what I'm meant to do. And then people hopefully will have resonance on that. They will say the same thing, that I really like what you're doing.
So you found your painting style like later in life, like you were in your 20s or any?
I'd say, okay, let me rewind. Back when I was doing all the illustration things, the style of painting was not the oil painting style. It was, to get back into representational, it wasn't even popular yet. I was an airbrush artist for a long time.
Now, did that mean that everyone was doing abstract? Is that what you mean by not?
I don't, because at that time, I wasn't even following art as much. I was painting on my side, but the things that I followed were Adweek or design and communications, things like that. So when I came into back to fine art or back to children's books, that's when it's like, hey, you're telling a story. And that's another thing that I brought from that career into the way I paint now is, if you look at this large painting, it's there's a story there, and every person may bring their own story with them as they step into that painting. And that's magic, I think. Now with children's books, it was a really cool experience because you were able to create the same kind of thing, but you had multiple paintings to do it with. You had page turns. And so you would create art based on page turns. And so you wanted to reveal, you would either paint something that just happened or something that is happening or something that's about to happen. And so there's all these little things that, you did. And as an illustrator back then, as an artist, I painted a lot of people. And so you had to be able to paint a likeness and to carry a likeness from page to page to page. And then later in some of the other books I did, like there's one about George Washington, and he started out at age 29 and then to his death, you had to paint his likeness at those ages and age him. So that was a fun project to do. And I think I brought a lot of those sensibilities to the way I paint now.
And so you were doing that, were doing that full time, right? So that was, you weren't having another job okay.
Right.
So you were doing art for a while now, like full time and okay.
Forever.
But it wasn't until you changed into oil painting after all the illustration and stuff that you found your style. So that was like later in life, because what I'm saying is like, I think a lot of people, like especially young people, think they have to find their style like right away.
You're
so
correct,
I think that it's very encouraging to hear that like you had all this experience that kind of led you to where you are and finding your style. It wasn't just like waking up one day and being like, oh, I want to paint nature.
Occasionally I'll bemoan and go, gosh, I wasted all those years in children's books and I could have been here sooner. And Sandra says, you're here now because of that experience and that brought you here. So never say anything bad about that. And she's right. Again.
I would do it you guys even one better and say that like while you're developing, especially in this social media age, it can actually accelerate your development to raise the stakes for yourself and actually put it out there in front of people, because like you said, you'll get the criticism and you'll probably get some negativity. I mean, to draw a quick analogy, I've been building my TikTok following and it's, I've been talking as a clothing stylist, right? Because I worked in that industry and I really understand how other people dress. And I'm a big fan of how other people dress and helping them find their style. But for me personally, I spent 10 years wearing like black sweaters in Converse All-Stars and old jeans. Like I didn't want to think about how I dressed. So I'm now having to figure out my own style, right? Because I'm trying to take more chances. And so I'm showing that online and it's not that great, to be perfectly honest. And I get a lot of criticism for it, but I just keep rolling. And like some people have really nasty things to say. Some people have nasty things to say disguised as nice things, and you just keep rolling. And it's what I'm trying to tell people is like, it's so easy to let yourself get chased away from something you really love.
Yeah, it is. And these days
you really take that stuff to heart. But what you have to, like you said, you can find the lesson in it. And, and I think that for me personally, it's like, I want to encourage people, like, the more you put yourself out there and just say, hey guys, I'm a work in progress, you know,
Be positive.
at what you will, you'll learn faster.
I can never understand people that are negative. Sandra's dad, he would always say, you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that's a good philosophy. And there are so many people with so much acid, and it's like, why? That's poisoning your system. You're choking on all this hate or whatever your problem is, instead of embracing what's out there or paying something forward. You have an opportunity in your life to be positive and to change somebody else's life. And this is Sandra, I did not really want to teach. She said, you're so good. I go, no, everybody knows this stuff. And she goes, no, they don't. I said, oh yeah, they do. And so after feedback, then you go, well, no, they don't. And so she's responsible for pushing me out of my introverted position to do the best I can. And that's all I can do. I will never, like I say, I am the expert on painting. I just try to paint the way I paint and enjoy it. And when I teach, I want to make sure that everybody else is enjoying it too. Because if you're not enjoying painting, why are you painting? So,
yeah. And it's like, what's the alternative? Do we lock ourselves in an incubator and wait for 10 years until we're perfect before we ever put ourselves in front of the world? It's like, who wants to live like that?
That's what people think. And I think honestly, like, that's what, unfortunately, like Instagram kind of like made that even worse, because everyone's posting this polished image of like what their finished progress. Like they don't see that you spent all this experience getting to where you are. They don't see that part. They just see your beautiful paintings. And same with Felix. Like, but yeah, it's like, I think also with TikTok, it's kind of breaking that down, because now it's like, you can't really post as polished of an image. And I think actually all the social media platforms are now pushing more towards authenticity over like perfection, which is something that was like, in the early days of Instagram, they kind of made that standard of perfection.
Now, why is that? Is it because you have to post so often, or what?
Well, now I think it's more authentic because of TikTok. I think because you have to post like 3 times a day to like grow your page, so like
I'm too lazy for that.
Yeah, you can't like make a perfect image. It's more just like you have to create on the fly, versus like Instagram. I think when it started, a lot of people became big on Instagram because of this like perfect image they put out. But now I think people are kind of turned off by that because it was going on for so long. People now want more of that like connection and more authenticity.
Well, all I know is I will post from the beginning of a painting to the end of a painting. And along the way, good, bad, or ugly, it is what it is. And, if somebody can learn something from that, that's great. If they want to learn more, they'll take a course. But all I know is I would have loved to had something like that when I was learning to paint. You're many steps ahead of back in the day. And I'm glad to be a part of it. I think so.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you're a bridge between those two eras, that you've been able to adapt and you've learned both ways of doing things.
Yeah, it's literally, I can talk to my son about that. When I was in college, it was a different technology. There was, it was just everything. Computers weren't even around yet. Right. I learned slide rule in high school. Getting a calculator or a black and white TV for Christmas, which choice? And I nearly chose the calculator because that was all new stuff. And then word processors came in, and then the personal computer, the Apple computer, and then computers got more powerful. And all the technology that from graphic design, let's say, a lot of that disappeared. And especially when personal computers came into access, when a client can typeset their own type, they don't need you anymore. Yeah, they do, because they don't know how to design very well. But I'm just saying, over time, lots and lots of things have changed technologically. And it's a good thing, but it's good to know the basics too. And the way I paint now is the basics. Of course, I use all sorts of gadgets and tools to get what I want to do. on my canvas. So I brought all that from my background in graphic design and the other art that I did. So
well, it's like really impressive that you have built such a big following, as like not having experience with all that technology, I guess, as much as like young people who are just born into it, you know? So, I mean, you guys have done a really good job, and especially with like your digital courses and all of that, like you're like really far ahead. And so I wanted to also ask like how that has been for you guys. I guess I'm guessing Sandra helps you full time, and also like how has it been adapting to creating your digital courses versus like in person, and also selling your paintings. I'm assuming you sell direct to your clients and through Instagram. So how has the technology like been for you?
the technology has been a great help. This painting back here is sold. It was sold just before it was finished. It was sold, but I will sell through the art in my gallery as well. So it's technology has changed so much. I was going to say about something that you were doing. Anyway, Sandra is about to answer the phone. Sandra is about to engage on a new career. She is just today, this very day, is her last day at her day job. She's been working at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Hewlett Packard for many, many years, and she's retiring. So now she can devote all of her time to this. And she's been doing that.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. She's excited. But she's been doing it on the side, you know, at the end of the day, okay, we need to film something. And Newt, my cat, he's like, let's film something. And he hops up in my lap and he starts purring. He knows timing. Like if we're late getting out of the studio, he's meow, 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 time to go over there. But yeah, he, at the end of the day, you know, turn the music on, whatever we want to listen to, and I'll be painting whatever I'm painting and she'll film, and there we go. And
that's awesome.
Day. So, but now I'm encouraging her. It's like, man, what would happen if you got a steady cam, a really good camera? So all these possibilities out here that are in front of us now. At the same time, I don't want to get things too complicated because, you know, all my graphic design teachers were Swiss, and the KISS principle was a big deal. So keep it simple, stupid. So. But yeah, this is, you know, not my typical daytime thing. This is the microphone I use actually when I'm recording on courses and stuff. So hopefully it's good enough quality.
Oh, it's great. I see the windscreen and everything. It's great.
I know you're like way more professional than even us, probably.
Yeah. So I have a quick question, just because, you know, as a landscape artist, I've actually really wanted to know this. Like, have you traveled a lot? And if so, like, what is your favorite region? Where on earth has inspired you the most?
Yeah, we went to Italy in I think it was 2008, and we were due to go to Spain, Italy around right when COVID hit, and we had to cancel the whole thing. So we're about to go to Alaska. We've been to Alaska several times. I love, you know, Italy's just beautiful. I have not been to Spain. I want to see what Spain is. There are parts of the U.S. that are just beautiful too. I mean, Texas has got a lot of variety to it. I remember visiting Oregon and thinking, oh my goodness, this side of the state is like this, and there's mountains, and there's a valley, Willamette Valley, and then there's a coastline. There's all these, there's so much to see, and which means there's so much to paint. Here in Texas, you know, it gets hotter, so to plein air paint is more challenging because of the heat for me. It's like I like the comfort of my studio with air conditioning, but I need to get out more and do more of the plein air painting. We did it in Maine a few years ago. The hill country, yeah. So anyway, there's just so much to see and favorite places. I've never been to South America. I'd love to visit Turkey. There's so many places that are just I see on Instagram, and or New Zealand. And it's not like you just snap your fingers and boop, you're there.
Right.
It takes time, it takes money. And I've been approached about, hey, you should do a workshop in France and we'll get you there. And I'm going, because again, I'm an introvert. You were asking about teaching in person. I've done that right before COVID, then COVID hit. And the thing is, through courses, I can teach so many more people than I can in just one workshop.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing when I was visiting a school. I would get so nervous going. I get there and be, and at the end of the day, I look at the teacher and I said, how do y'all do this every day? I get home and be worn out, because for an introvert, that kind of activity is not your nature. And it's just like, oh, whereas an extrovert, that's like, let's keep doing some more.
Yeah. That's so funny because Felix is the exact same way. Like we tried to do, like we did maybe one workshop and he's like, I don't know if I can do this. He's like so exhausted. Yeah. But the funny thing is like to do like digital courses and stuff, like it's fine for him. But like in person, he's like, this is so exhausting.
Yeah.
And like you, Andrea pushed me to, do the courses. But I really didn't want to in the beginning, I just kind of like,
he's an introvert.
Yeah.
Like,
I just wanted to keep like exploring still. And even now, like I'm still young and I'm learning so much. I feel like I'm sure I'm kind of teaching the basics, but I'm like, I need some time to, learn and experiment with myself,
Sandra, I've discovered this too. And it's something we'll always battle with. And she says it's totally normal. And this is what you're talking about too, imposter syndrome. So, I don't know enough to teach that or blah, blah, blah. And basically it's me going into my shell, keeping comfortable with what I'm comfortable with. So when you have to put yourself out there and then say that, like I said, I'm never going to say I'm the expert and this is the only way you should do it. Because there are people that did say those things. But I'll say, this is the way I do it. And if it works for you, fantastic. So at the end of the day, courses are, I think, the best way for me, at least. Sandra's talking about possibly doing some sort of a membership thing, or we're going to try to get more onto YouTube actually too, because Instagram is all filming, upright like this, and YouTube is the full format. So as the courses are the full format. So
Felix might, you could maybe study Felix's model when you're getting started on YouTube, because they've done pretty well on there.
Cool.
And Felix also has paid content for his lessons, but every once in a while he'll put a full lesson on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think the format is super good for teachers like you guys.
Yeah. Sandra, you need to talk to him.
Well, also we found that like YouTube is where it's more like the people that are serious, the more people that are like there to learn,
Right.
Instagram, I think it's more like entertainment. Yeah. Some people will want to learn, but we found that YouTube is definitely the best platform for learning.
Okay. Hear that?
So you guys are on Instagram mainly. Are you guys anywhere else? Like, have you guys opened TikTok or Facebook, or did you get back into Facebook, or just Instagram is your main platform?
We shared a Facebook, I think, but there's just not any feedback or all the things and we've never tried to do ads or anything like that on Facebook or anything really. So everything that we have is pretty much organic through Instagram mostly.
And why do you think your guys' Instagram exploded? Do you think it's because
probably
but is it because of posting every day, or is it because of
we get that question. I think posting every day, there were all the rules that people would tell you. It's like only have 6 hashtags, blah 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 blah. We've always used maximum, only post at certain times. Where did these people get that information from? And so I don't know. We maximum hashtags that you can use. Try different times of the day. Yeah, but post daily. It's not that hard to post daily if you just make it into your schedule, really. And so it's fun to do. Like I said, YouTube, I think what we're talking about doing is more, I don't know, more, it's horizontal. You're going to be longer than just 1 minute. So at the same time, there are just so many new things out there that are in front of us to try. Now she doesn't have a job anymore, so
That's exciting.
no, I'm excited for her because it's you know how hard it is when you have to split your attention on things.
Yes.
And I know it's harder for me when I'm trying to work on, more than one painting at a time. Sometimes it's like if I'm working on a course painting and then working on a commission, you have to switch gears. And with me, I have a different palette. I'm right-handed, and it's kind of weird painting from the other side to paint on the painting. So
yeah,
I have
totally
two
understand.
palettes. Yeah.
So earlier you said you have a gallery. You're showing in the gallery, right?
That's in Fredericksburg, Texas. Yeah. The Good Art Company.
And that's the only gallery you're showing. Okay. And what would you say your experience with that compared to social media?
Like, which one do you prefer?
They're apples and oranges, really. Because they're on social media too. When I post something, they will post it as well. So it's kind of a partnership. Of course, if somebody, calls me up and says, "Hey, I want to buy your painting directly," I'll say, "Okay," because it's just there and easy, and it's business. Business is business. So, but the gallery thing, again, COVID messed up a lot of the gallery stuff for a period of time. I don't know if it's a lot better yet or not, but in the town where this was, it's a really beautiful little town, and they used to have a Friday night art walk once a month. And so the various galleries would be open, and you could go and see all these various things going on. And then COVID just blasted everything. It shut everything down. And then, open by appointment only. And so I'm sure it hurt the galleries. I was still making sales. Luckily, I was blessed.
So it's interesting because I remember during the COVID phase, actually, I've been getting DMs and messages from all over the world, parts of the world, like asking if I wanted to show my art in the gallery, but I would have to pay for space.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it sounds like a legit, good gallery, but I have to pay a few $1,000s to space.
No.
So I didn't go for it, but I was tempted. I was excited. Oh, a gallery reached out to me, and
Oh yeah, that's something important to talk about. I feel like for younger artists, because we've been having that and we've never done it because
it's a pay to play thing. Don't do it. There's also another thing that, again, all the technology stuff that's making this possible is somebody will want to buy your painting, and then they'll send you a check that's got the amount over what you're requesting. And then I don't remember the way it goes, but there's always something goofy in it. You can check the routing number on the check. It's like the same in the real place. So you have to be cautious about, don't just send artwork anywhere without, knowing for sure. And you shouldn't have to pay to play. I have nothing against people entering competitions and things like that, but I've seen things behind the scenes on competitions I didn't care for, and it gets expensive. And it's in a way, the various places that do those kind of competitions, they're making money on it. So if it's important to you to do that, to win awards, then go for it. It's fine. Legit galleries and stuff. Yeah, legit galleries, you don't have to pay. I was invited, so.
That's good.
Who knows?
That's good to know. That's good to know because, a lot of artists also, once they start getting the messages, they don't know what to do. Because like a New York gallery would reach out, and it's in Chelsea. It's a great location, right? And then you're thinking this is a great opportunity because I know Chelsea. I've been in there, and there's a lot of galleries there, and it's like a tempting situation. But it's good to know, to be careful if they're asking for you to pay, that might be because
it's
tricky.
Not a good thing.
Well, guys, we're coming up to the end of the podcast, and we always like to close it out with a thing called Ask an Artist. Usually we have a question, but I need to do a better job of promoting this because we didn't get any questions this week. So I just want to ask you guys a question that's that I feel like I would like to know. And so for Felix and Layne, I just want to know what's inspiring you guys currently, because I think that, you know, as an artist myself, I know inspiration changes a lot and we're always following some new thing. And so I just want to know what's currently on your mind and what you've been thinking of, whether it's somebody else's art or something else in nature or anything.
You want to go first, Layne, or should I?
You can go first.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's
steal your answer.
It's like different all the time, you know, like it's like you don't know what you're expecting. And I kind of like what we talked about earlier, like you want to not think about the overall picture. Don't overthink about what's your next series or your next thing. You don't want to think too far ahead, but just kind of take it almost like a day by day type of thing. And a lot of the times for me personally, I would try and experiment and try something. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if I could use my old style or like use this and kind of work with this tool now, this new tool that I'm excited about, and see how much. And then that gives me inspiration to like ideas to experiment and try, continue painting. And I think for me, it's been that, like just experimenting with materials and how I can bring my old, things that I've tested to this new tool, and see what happens. That's what I'm working.
That's a really good attitude to have. I used to have a friend that he had a job and he just would never leave it. And I said, how come you're getting all these bad things happening to you? Why don't you leave? And he said, comfort in the rut. So people, artists can be very, very comfortable in the way they've always doing something, and they comfort in the rut. Whereas what you just said is a really good attitude to look forward to and see what happens, be open to those opportunities, be positive and see what comes. Day-to-day experience, that's what life is about. So with me, I will always embrace the light. I mean, I will every day I'll be looking outside or be walking on our walk, and I'll just stop and go, honey, look at this. And it's daily like this, and it'll inspire something else in a future painting. And so I just always like to be able to bring whatever I can see to life in a painting. And when I feel like I've done that, it's a heartwarming feeling. So it comes down to feeling.
That's awesome.
So Layne, where can people find you? I know Instagram, but also have you started your YouTube yet?
Let's see. I've got basically social media is at Layne Johnson Studio. So same thing on YouTube, Sandra? Yeah, at Layne Johnson Studio is on Instagram, and the website is just laynejohnson.com. So, I do look forward to doing more on YouTube. I keep telling Sandra, I'll have to start painting better. And she goes, no, we just need to get more people to see your work. Like, well, we just need to work on that.
Yeah, YouTube is great. You guys got to get going there.
I tell you what, whenever I need to know how to do anything, that's where I go. It's like, how do I get this rear windshield wiper off of the car?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the awesome thing about YouTube.
So people can, if they wanted to learn with you, they can go to your website, and that's where they can find your classes.
Yes, it's also on Instagram. If you go into my bio, there's links there. It's taught through Teachable, a really great company that does really well. It's easy to navigate in the courses. A lot of people talk about that. And the thing about a course, I think is important for a lot of people, is some people are nervous about, like in a teaching situation or a live workshop, they're worried about other people watching what they do. They're nervous about, they're self-conscious about what they're doing. Whereas in a course, you can take your time, come in and out of it. You'll pick up right where you were left off. You can always come back to it. It's evergreen. I mean, you can come back to it again and again and again, and you can take your time with no pressure. So, and so for some people, especially people earlier in their painting journeys, that's a big deal. And whereas me, in the old days, I would be at a conference center dressed up as a pirate and painting a Revolutionary War scene, and people were over their shoulder. Do you mind if we watch? I said, I don't care. I'm just painting. So, but yeah, it's been fun. And just basically at Layne Johnson Studio. So
Great.
there it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Layne. It's been so good to have you and to get to know you and Sandra and hear what you're up to and what inspires you. And thank you to the Color by Felix community for listening in. And we hope you guys got a lot out of this episode. If you did, please be sure to leave a review wherever you're listening. And we hope to see you next week.
Again, thank you, Layne. Awesome meeting you and talking to you. It was our pleasure. And in the future, if you don't mind, we might have you back and see where you're at, and
Sure.
how things are doing with.
Love to hear how it's going on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can meet the wizard behind the curtain too.
Yes,
Pay no attention to the man. No.
yeah, you
Well,
should have
you
a
know,
camera
like
next
this-
time, Sandra.
Yeah.
Your story is kind of very similar to my story, with Andrea, because
Mhm.
she's.
I'm
been-
also a wizard behind the curtain.
Yes.
Shazam.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I just want to say thank you again, Andrea, Felix, Sebastian. It's been a great pleasure talking to all of y'all. And
You
like I
too.
said, I don't get out much, so she doesn't let me out. No, I'm going to be in so much trouble after this is over.
Awesome. Yeah,
Well,
it'd be
we'll
great
keep
for you
in
to come
touch.
on. I think Felix's audience is going to absolutely love your work if they haven't already. I'm sure a huge chunk of them are already following you. But
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
good to me. I'm here to do what I do, and blessed to be able to do it. So a lot of people are not so blessed. So thank you, God.
Mhm.
Amen.
Amen.
you God,
Amen.
amen.
So
Thank you again. That's awesome. It was a really fun one. Thank you
Yes.
you're welcome. See y'all next time.
Take care, Layne.
See you
Yeah.
next
Keep in
time.
touch.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.